Hey guys, Scoop the Lazy Geek here and welcome back to the channel. It has been rainy and cloudy here in Tokyo, Japan, so I haven't been able to get a lot of time imaging some astrophotography targets, unfortunately, which means that, like most cloudy periods of time, I am stuck with processing. And I was wondering whether there was a way to make processing a bit more fun and a bit more fast so I can be lazier. And while I was watching a speed run of a video game that I like, basically a player trying to complete the game in the shortest amount of time possible by using all sorts of tips and tricks, I decided that I wanted to do a processing speed run of the latest data that I got from my telescopes before the cloudy period, which was data on the Bubble Nebula. And the idea behind that is really that I like to be lazy. If you know my channel, you can see that I've put a lot of work into basically automating everything. So I do a lot of short-term work for long-term automation and being lazy, right? So short-term non-lazy for long-term laziness has been my motto. And I haven't done that quite a lot for processing, even though the more I look at my processing flows, the more I can see that like I spent a relatively little amount of time in getting the image from 0% to 90% of the final result. And then I spend the lion's share of the time on my images and effort getting from those 90% to those 95% because I'm never perfectly happy with my images, so I never get to 100%. But like those last additional 5% are always tripping me up, and sometimes for hours, which is not super productive, especially since I've already gone to 90%. And so I decided, like with a speedrun kind of idea, this should let me be disciplined in basically not wasting my time. Well, it's not wasting my time, but not being too picky about my own images, not being too much of a perfectionist, not spending so many hours getting the colors just right, but just getting my image to an acceptable level that still looks really good without like going overboard. And so that's what I thought my target was, to do a speed run on that image of the bubble nebula that I took recently, and I wanted to make my speed run, loading times included and processing times included, less than 10 minutes long. And so you know me, I did not practice for that. I just went with it, hands in my pocket, and we'll see the result of that speed run in a moment in this video. Did I manage to get it less than 10 minutes? How was the result? We'll see. Before that, I'm going to explain the preparation steps because I did prepare a little bit without really rehearsing, but I did prepare a little bit so that we could basically run through the steps that I typically do for processing without having to think too much about them. So let's have a look at my computer screen. And you can see that instead of PixInsight, I will be starting my processing via Grexpert, which is the excellent gradient exterminator or gradient extraction tool that is free and open source. It recently added AI capabilities that basically make it possible to do almost perfect background extraction in one click, which for a lazy person like me is amazing. I've done a very recent video on that, so I'll put the link down below and also up above if I remember and I'm not too lazy to do it. So you see, I'll be ready to open my image in Grexpert, and the moment I click on this load image button is when the counter will start. Also, I have in the background open my file explorer on the folder with my data files, just so I can have access to them quickly. And finally, I have PixInsight open. PixInsight is a very expensive piece of software that, in my opinion, is worth every penny and much more than that. It's probably my best and most beloved purchase in the realm of astrophotography. It has a crazy learning curve, but I absolutely love it. Anyway, you can see that something that you don't often see with my PixInsight videos is I have some icons in the right. I had always been too lazy to create process icons for the processes, the steps of the processing that I use most often, but that goes against my long-term laziness philosophy. So by preparing for that speed run, well, I made all of those process icons, and going forward, I'll probably keep using them, which is good. It's basically an evolution for me, and it's basically taking the groundwork that I've put in my equipment, also putting it in the software. So you can see I created a lot of process icons, and if you're not familiar with how to do that in PixInsight, you can simply like open any process that you know you're going to be like using a lot. You can set your parameters in that process. Maybe this one wasn't the best example, and then you can basically drag and drop it to the desktop or whatever we can call it, the workspace, let's say. Then you can set the icon identifier, so the bearing. There's probably a better way to do that with the name preset to the name of the process, but I don't know it yet. And once you are done with creating all of those icons, although we'll go through them, through the ones that I've created one by one in a moment, you can go and save the project. And the only thing you really want to do is make sure you have include icons here checked. And that will save your process icons, and you can reopen that project anytime later on to reuse your process icons. If you are interested, I will be putting a link to my own project with all of those process icons, so you can use them. Note that this relies on installing all of the scripts and processes that I'll be using. So you'll have the links to BuildBlanchen and Cosmic Photons repositories as well, which I already covered in previous videos. Anyway, let's look at the processes that I created. They're more or less in the order that I would typically use them. We have Blur Exterminator. So Blur Exterminator is a way to sharpen your images based on the data that is in the image, and specifically like things like star shapes, which let us estimate a blurring function and then take the reverse of that function. And I have it like more or less on the default settings. Then we have Star Exterminator, which I have set to generate a star image with the unscreen star method. We have Noise Exterminator, which is set to 0.6, which is the level of denoising that seems to work pretty well for my own images. So those are 3 AI-powered tools. Those are 3 paying plugins that are amazing, but they're not cheap. And then I have some simple pixel math that I use and reuse. So I have Make03, which is basically combining an image called B for blue and an image for G for green. This is because the data that I have comes from dual band narrowband filters. One H-alpha oxygen 3 filter from Altair Astro, and another one sulfur 2 oxygen 3 filter, again from Altair Astro. I also have a video on that topic. Again, I'll put links in the description and also above if I don't forget. And so those filters, they capture oxygen 3. Oxygen 3 will be basically captured in the green and blue channels. And by combining them, we basically get the oxygen 3 out of my color camera via those 2 filters. Because we have 2 filters, we need to do this process once per filter. And therefore, I have a second script that will let me basically take the output, oxygen 3, from each of the filters and combine it together. This is just an average. I know in my previous video, a lot of people have told me I could just add them, but adding and averaging, it's pretty much the same thing with the floating point precision that we have in PixInsight. And so that's like basically the steps to make the oxygen 3 channel that I'll be using. And then I have BuildBlanchen's stretching scripts that are amazing. I'll put the links down in the description to his video describing those scripts. This allows me to basically stretch independently the sulfur 2, H-alpha, and oxygen 3 channels to get them to roughly the same level as a stretched image before I apply the LRGB combination, which is a tool that allows you to have luminance, red, green, and blue channels mapped to several monochrome images that you have in your workspace, and then you get a color image. And this tool, in theory, needs to be used after the image has been stretched. So that's why I have it after BuildBlanchen's stretch. This can also be done via pixel math, but for whatever reason, I prefer to use the LRGB combination tool. Then we have another amazing Cosmic Photons / BuildBlanchen process called narrowband normalization. This will let us go from the output of the LRGB combination, which is going to be very green because the green channel is assigned to H-alpha, and H-alpha is the most overpowering signal you have. And this will basically massage the color channels to get the oxygen 3 and sulfur 2 to shine through the H-alpha. It makes a big difference. And then I have like the post-processing or the color adjustment kind of routines. Color mask, which is set to yellow by default, so I could select the color yellow from my image and then apply curves just to the yellow tones of the image. I have curves to be able to change the saturation, the contrast, etc. on my images. Like going back to narrowband normalization, by the way, this should be SHO, and that's, you'll see it during the speedrun. Color mask, you can see by double clicking, I see all of the parameters. If I click on the square icon, it will apply the process directly to whatever image is selected. If I click on the round icon while there is an image available, I'll be able to change the parameters. Then we have SCNR, which is a method to remove a little bit of the green from the image. There's still some green that's left from the narrowband normalization, and we can get rid of some or keep it. It's up to us, but I have it available here. Then I have some pixel mask script to recombine the stars, which relies on two images, one which is only the stars, and the other one that is the starless image. So you'll see me rename them or rename the images in my speedrun. And then we have things like star reduction, which is another one of Cosmic Photon / Bill Blenchen's script, which relies on some parameters, which is a star full image and a starless image. So you'll see me using that again in the speedrun. And finally, dynamic crop, because I never know when I want to crop the image to basically make my processing easier. Actually, dynamic crop, I realized while I was speedrunning, is not a good process to have as a process icon because it's pre-initialized and it makes it actually more difficult to use than just like selecting it directly from the list here. So this icon is probably not so useful. What is really cool with all of those process icons is if I want to use one, I can just like drag and drop it directly onto the image to apply it with the settings that are registered in there. Or I can open the process and then play with the parameters before I apply them to the image. So I can have a one drag and drop apply, or I can modify parameters as needed before I apply it. And for things like scripts, like this star reduction script, if I want to apply it directly, it's the square icon. And if I want to amend the parameters first, it's the round icon. And with that, we have all of the elements needed to go through my speedrun, complete with commentary, breathless commentary, just to tell you the process I went through. I did my speedrun on my own without commenting at all on it because I was too concentrated on getting the steps right. You will also see two timers at the bottom of the speedrun. One timer, the top one, is the timer of when I was actually active, moving the mouse and changing parameters, etc. And the other timer is the total time that I've taken, including the loading times and processing times of each of the processes. So if I ran Noise Exterminator and I was waiting, one timer would be paused while the other was increasing still. The loading times were basically removed manually by me, like by pausing the top timer. So sometimes I forget it, so I might be overestimating the amount of time that was actually active. So anyway, let's go through that speed run. Let's see, did I manage it under 10 minutes? We shall see. And if you're interested in doing speedruns, it would be fun to see what other people can come up with. So let's get to it. Okay, we are getting started in Graxpert, and the countdown will start when I load the image. It's gone. We are loading the first Oxygen 3 HA image. We'll quickly do a calculate background. And let's Graxpert finish to compute the background. We can see down on the left-hand side, we have quite a bit of luminosity. Will it be able to get rid of that? Hopefully, yes. And yes, the processing is done. We're going to save that as a file, and then we can go ahead and load the next image, which is going to be the S203, which will allow us in the end to do a Hubble palette. We are computing the background again. And again, we can see that on the left-hand side, we probably had incorrect flats. There is some luminosity with a fairly sharp gradient. So maybe the smoothing parameter should have been set to 0, but it's too late already because we have saved the image. We are now in PixInsight, and we are going to open the two images to process. So we have the H alpha oxygen 3 and the sulfur 2 oxygen 3. But because I first want to get the stars that I will be recombining into the final image, so that's my very first step, I stretch the image first as I just did, and then I apply star exterminator on it. So I'm using the H alpha image. and we have stretched it. We're going to take the stars, and basically we're just going to set the stars aside to be able to put them back into the image once it is fully processed and stretched again. Okay, we have the stars, so we're gonna rename that stars, put that into the corner, and we now should be good to basically go back to start with the unstretched image, and we're gonna rename it to HO for H-alpha oxygen 3, and this one SO for sulfur 2 oxygen 3. Now we can apply blur exterminator on both of those images. I'm doing it blind because it would have actually been better to do the unlinked stretch before we get that far, but such are things. I've decided to go without even doing the stretch. But yeah, it's going to work. You can notice that we have 1 minute of active time at this stage versus 2 minutes total of processing time. How will the gap keep growing larger going forward? The most time-intensive operations are those star exterminations and blur exterminations. So I've done blur exterminator, which should have sharpened both images, and now I'm doing star exterminator on both. This time I will not keep the stars. I will just I just want to process the images without any stars in them to then re-add them back at the very end with the stars icon that we have on the right hand side there. So we are currently doing star exterminator on both of those images, completely blind. We're not looking at what we're doing. We know that it's kind of going to work, and we're using the existing process icons that I've put in. Of course, we're using CUDA acceleration with an NVIDIA GPU. This makes the process much faster. If you're interested in that, I have a video on the topic. But anyway, after that, we do noise exterminator on both images separately. We'll probably do another layer of noise exterminator later on once we combine both images. So now we are ended up with a deconvoluted noise exterminator starless images for both sulfur oxygen 3 and H-alpha oxygen 3. I am now doing the stretch, but because I am doing the stretch or the auto stretch on the noise exterminator images, the stretch is a bit aggressive, so we don't see what we're doing. Or actually exaggerate the stretch. And I've also separated the channel of the HO image into red, green, and blue. So the red one is going to be H-alpha. I renamed it to HA. The green and blue I renamed to G and B. And now I'm going to use my pre-made pixel mask to combine the B and the G. Again, kind of sight unseen. And now we have a first oxygen 3 image using the H-alpha oxygen 3 image that we captured. Okay, I'm keeping H-alpha, good, a little bit of a break, but now I need to do exactly the same thing on the sulfur 2 oxygen 3 image. We are splitting the channels. Once the channels are split, we'll be able to rename red again to sulfur 2 because this is where the sulfur 2 bandpass ended up in, and now we're renaming the channels B and G again so we can apply the same pixel mask as earlier to basically make a second oxygen 3 channel based on the sulfur 2 image. This is it. We have oxygen 3. You can see the background extraction was not completely successful. We have a light area on the left hand side, but we don't have the time to look at that. We're closing the B and G images, and now we are going to be combining both the oxygen 3 channels that we got from each of the separate images, each with their separate filters. So for that, we're going to use the combine O3 pixel mask that we have on the right here. And because I'm seeing that oxygen 3.1 is slightly less noisy than oxygen 3.2, probably there's some H-alpha that also made it into that channel. I'm going to change the weights to basically use oxygen 3.1 more, and this gives us our final oxygen 3 channel image. I can close the in this independent kind of oxygen 1 and oxygen 2 images. And now I should be able to basically stretch all of those images using Bill's unlinked stretch script by basically dragging the process icon onto all of those images one by one. Now I can take a little bit of break commenting. I know that a lot of you are lost, but that is the nature of speedruns. It's the fun part of our speedruns, getting completely lost about what is happening on the screen because things are moving too fast. Now I am going to go into the LRGB combination, which is supposed to be done once you're in the nonlinear stage, which we are at now because we're able to, because we've stretched the images. A little bit of a mistake that leads to lost time, but we have red to S2, green to H-alpha, blue to oxygen 3. The channel combination is going on. It will be over now, and we have the combined image, which is very green, as is the want with the Hubble palette that we always get. I'm doing a little bit of noise exterminator, a second round of it on the stretched image. Sometimes I do that, sometimes I don't. I decide to do it here, whatever. And now we can do the magical narrowband normalization from Bill Blanchard. And here we have like a nice kind of Hubble palette. We're not going to spend too much time working on it, which will be basically our biggest regret. But we're going to do some curves. I want to do a contrast curve to start with. So this is the area of time where I think we are going to lose the most time in that speed run. So here we're trying to darken the dark areas and while keeping the nebulosity. And I think this is probably not too bad. No, oh, we're trying to go a bit further there. Okay, I see what we're doing. So yeah, that's like the artistic part of things. Right now, we are no longer on autopilot. We're no longer on rails. We have to do some manual work here. My next step is a little bit of SCNR. Yeah, 0.25, why not? This is going to make the blue here bluer, which is fine. And I think what next? Another layer of noise exterminator. I think I'm going a bit ham on this, but you know, this is the pressure of a speed run. I'm like trying to go as fast as possible, so I have very, very little time to think. And now we're gonna do a color mask. This is preset to yellow, so we're gonna take the yellow channel, and this will also blur the mask, so we're able to apply the yellow channel mask onto the image. And we're gonna not show the mask and probably open the curves process. Here we are. And green channel, we're gonna do a contrast curve on the green channel. We are losing time by selecting the wrong preview, but whatever. Again, this is an area where we would normally spend more time, but we're doing contrast curve on green. We're increasing the red to get more of a Hubble palette kind of style and applying that to the main image. Now, probably we're going to remove the mask on the image before going back to the curves and maybe some saturation. Yes, some saturation. I'd probably do a color mask on the blue if I had more time, but I am too lazy for that. We are running out of time. We want to be as quick as possible in the speed run. And now we have some saturation that has been done on the image. I'm cloning the image, so that's probably I'm going to do the recombination of the stars. So we have the starless image, and I'm making what am I doing now? Okay, so we have starless and we have image 15. So recombined stars is actually an operation that relies on the names of the stars and starless identifiers. So now I'm renaming my starless into starful and my clone of the starless image into starless. This is going to let us use the star reduction. I'm using the round icon so I can open all of the parameters. And you can see my target view is star full and my starless view is starless. I'm looking whether I should do 2 iterations, decide against this. This will just reduce our stars. We're going to validate that. And now we get the image with the stars reduced, which is very close to our final image. We could call this our final image, but I decided to do a dynamic crop, except that from the process icon, it didn't really work really well. We're losing time here. I feel like I should have called this as the final image, but whatever. Let's do the dynamic crop. Here we go. We're basically centering on the bubble nebula itself. This is probably like just losing time for us, but I believe this should be our final image, and the counters are off. We are at 9 minutes and 52 seconds, including the processing / loading times when I was not active, and 7 minutes 22 seconds otherwise, so just the active time. And there you have it. We succeeded, barely, but we succeeded with 9 minutes and 53 seconds almost. I think I could have been faster by not doing this dynamic crop, but I was a bit like fixated on the red tinge that we had on the side of the image, and I wanted to focus more on the bubble nebula. I actually was not able to even look at the timer because I had to run through the processes as quickly as I could in the right order without making too many mistakes, because each mistake will eat up precious seconds. At the same time, I had to make sure to press the pause button when things were loading or processing and I wasn't being active. I was just waiting for PixInsight to complete, or Graxpert to complete the processing. One of the cool things, by the way, with Graxpert, which may not have been super obvious in the video, is that it not only removes the background, but it also does a background neutralization at the same time. So this is one less step to have to do in PixInsight. There is also one thing that I regret in that speedrun, and doing it might have put me over time, but I just completely forgot about it, is the stars in my H-alpha oxygen 3 image, which I ended up recombining with the processed image at the end, were greenish. So ideally, I would have applied an SCNR process to the stars image before recombining, but I didn't take the time to actually look at the stars properly, so I wasn't able to do that. But there you go. It is possible to really like run through processing within 10 minutes, be done with it, go to the next image, and keep yourself disciplined, not spending hours and hours and hours fine-tuning things like a crazy perfectionist that at heart we all are, and it's really a plague. I wish I was less demanding of myself in this hobby, but this kind of speedrunning helps me with that. I also want to disclose that Bill Blanchon had custom written a script for me that I could have used in this speedrun to make things even faster, but then it would have been a bit too confusing. I still wanted to show like the step-by-step, and to be honest, Bill Blanchon's script made things too easy, and I felt like I was losing a bit of control, especially with the Oxygen 3 channel creation. So yeah, I decided to go like through the steps. Even then, it was, I'm sure, a bit confusing. But you know, what do you think of this? What do you think of this idea of like trying to just like get it done with within a time limit, just so that we can keep ourselves disciplined without having, you know, spending more time with your loved ones or your CFO, because if you spend more time with your CFO, you'll be able to spend more money on equipment later. This is all strategy, guys, all strategy. So let me know what you think in the comments. Leave a like to the video. If you're new to the channel, you can subscribe and also click the bell icon. Currently, it is cloudy in Tokyo because I have many subscribers in a normally cloudy place who subscribe to the channel, and I took away their clouds because that's what happens when you subscribe. You get good weather at night for astrophotography. This is absolutely guaranteed. You'll get even better effect if you like the channel and click the bell icon and leave a comment. And if you actually join my channel as a member, or you join my Patreon as a Patreon supporter, you will even get perfectly clear skies for the rest of your life. More seriously, you guys, everyone, all the viewers, my Patreon supporters, my channel members, you guys make the channel possible. Thank you so much. It's really an amazing journey. With that, I will leave you with the end result, with a nice like music zooming in onto the end result. Enjoy it, and I hope you enjoy the video. As always, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget whenever you can to look up at the stars, and I'll see you next time.